Before I start, I would like to thank, first of all, my immediate colleagues from Geisenheim, but also all the other contributors from various fields and backgrounds. So within our work package, apart from contributions through university, we also had contributors from small, medium enterprises as well as wineries. What are, apart from climate change, some viticultural challenges for our future? First of all, producing to a high crop yield, I think, is something we should aim for. However, don't misunderstand that meaning, because this crop yield should actually match the target, what you demand in terms of quality. And at the same time, of course, we will need to keep the vines in healthy shape. Well, you could say this could all be summarized under sustainable production to some extent. But the healthy state of the wine then, of course, brings me to the next step in terms of how we should treat our wines, how they might be balanced. Well, a nice citation from John Gladstone is in the books for a couple of years. I think we still need to consider that type of concept. In particularly in our field, consider the leaf area to fruit weight ratio. Well, this is due to the fact that, of course, the energy provided by the sun transformed through carbon assimilation at the end will be distributed within the plant to various sink locations, and apart from the shoot tip, there is, of course, the clusters, the bunches, as another sink that are on, and both, of course, are looking for carbons to be allocated to that position. When we start to remove leaves, of course, then we are already altering our microclimate, and we are changing the sink source availability within the plant. Well, from a plant health point of view, of course, improving on the microclimate certainly does improve on cluster health, and sanitary aspects, of course, are very important. However, not all grape varieties do probably like high sun exposure. So even so, this type of defoliation practice is heavily used. In the industry, we probably need to think whether this always matches our desire in terms of fruit quality. During the Innovine Project, we then adapted various other strategies, and just to highlight two. One is defoliating above the bunch zone, where the clusters maintain shaded and relatively low sun exposed. And the other treatment would then be a severe pruning, where we create more or less bonsai plants in the field, and where we only work on a tiny little canopy. A huge part in the industry has developed different types of machines, going from a couple of thousands to 40,000 euros per machine. The costs, of course, differ dramatically. The new instrumentation, as you can see in the middle, they work on 2 rows and both sides. So you sometimes wonder whether all these activities are actually in good knowledge and whether everybody knows what he's doing. Of course, this is not a complete list. Just to be a little bit patriotic, I've highlighted 3 German producers, but they are available from all over the world. In terms of strategies, of course, we did hear a lot during the morning about various fungus-tolerant varieties. Within our work package, we focused on major varieties of the regions in Portugal, in Italy, and in Germany. So Tempranillo, Otrugo, and Riesling were the three varieties we've tested. And we also thought that we should probably focus a little bit on different types of trellis systems. Of course, once a vineyard is planted or trellising is established, it is hard to change. However, there are probably some opportunities to at least adapt or overcome that problem a little bit. And one that became more fashioned due to various reasons in the last couple of years is the one which was introduced by Intrieri a couple of years ago, which is called semi-minimal pruned hedge, where you basically convert a VSP system into a minimal pruning system. And the VSP is on the left-hand side, the semi-minimal pruned hedge on the right-hand side. So if we look at the size and shape of the clusters, of course, you could make up your mind what you probably prefer. A compact bunch with a higher risk to bunch rot, for instance, or a more open, loose cluster. Both of them belong to Riesling. I'm sure that many growers who are used to that variety would not consider this as a Riesling bunch shape anymore. Well, the major issue, of course, in converting to such a system usually is linked to money, to labor costs, and to efficiency. However, this is only one side because it distributes the cluster over the entire canopy. It can be beneficial in terms of the fruit exposition, and I've shown you the picture of the cluster size before. However, as you can imagine, the productivity of a wine is not endless, but the capacity under some circumstances quite high, and therefore you need to think about strategies to crops in such a system. Well, this gives you an idea about how the bunch zone actually will be extended. So from a small band in a VSP system, you will then have clusters distributed nicely over a larger area, over a larger size. And this certainly had a very good or high impact on the low incidence of bunch rot in many of our field trials. So in terms of long-term strategies, this might be something we should keep in mind and consider by altering the microclimate, whether we then also have beneficial effects and side effects through the microclimate on berry health. On the other hand, of course, due to the more and more unpredictable weather conditions with weather extremes, of course, we also have to think about seasonal strategies to overcome these new challenges. And therefore, we did trial many different defoliation practices, and mainly in the focus of timing of the position where we defoliated and the intensity, the frequency, how often this was prepared. I will show you a couple of case studies from various places and different environments. First of all, we will start in Portugal, where Tempranillo was trialed, and different type of defoliation practices did occur, either from both sides of the canopy or just from one side. early or late, and of course within that VSP system they were then compared to an untouched bunch zone area. Well, one of the outcomes, of course, as you can imagine, the climatic conditions, they vary from place to place and from year to year. And well, even so, we had the goal to investigate towards different types of diseases. They did not always occur in all places to the same extent. In 2014, for instance, in Portugal, they had severe damage through, or higher damage through botrytis compared to the other years. Well, once the early defoliation was implemented, this was causing an extreme change in the cluster architecture, and not only in the size, but also in the number of berries, of course, which first of all reduces the crop, and on the other hand makes the cluster more loose and gives them again less susceptibility to bunch rot diseases. In particularly in the vintage 2014, this strategy significantly did improve on the susceptibility against botrytis. In Italy, then a wide variety was trialed, Otrugo, and again on a VSP system, more or less same planting densities. The experiments were repeated over 3 years, and we had early and late defoliation practices, and also some bunch thinning prior to veraison. So in here, again, the early leaf removal practices strongly impacted on the incidence of botrytis, which was for both treatments dramatically reduced. And interestingly, even so, the crop yield was reduced for the BT treatment. The incidence of botrytis remained very high. So just by reducing crop yield, we certainly do not have a strategy to improve on sanitary aspects within our bunch zone. Apart from bunches becoming more open, looser, of course, the situation that you end up with smaller and larger berries also helps to reduce the incidence of bunch rot. At Geisenheim, we then did experiments on Riesling, and I would highlight some results from the various positions. The Riesling, again, we tried to do not fully sun expose to maintain the wine style, the aromas, which we would like to achieve, and therefore the closed bunch zone was one way to tackle this. To give you a brief idea what it may look like if you defoliate or if you severely summer prune, the red bars are of the same length, and from the shade of the different of the 3 types of canopy, you can clearly see in the middle that the canopy becomes really open above the bunch zone, and of course the severe summer pruning was heavily reduced by almost 50% of the leaf area compared to the control. Plasmopara is an issue, and in particularly in 2016, luckily enough, well, this was not part of the trial for this season, but the damage in some region was really dramatic. And if you look through the 3 vintages where we tested for downy mildew, then you will notice again between the years extreme differences, and whilst in 1 year hardly any downy mildew did occur, for instance in 2015, in other years of course this could be a major damage. Within the different treatments, no significant differences, and against the disease of Plasmopara, we are not able to really protect our vines by manipulating the canopy. Another important or future tool might be for any type of decision making. Of course, you need sound information from your vineyard by implementing different new technologies, measuring or focusing on the reflectance of the leaf. There was one sensor developed which enables us to detect for the start of or the outbreak of the pathogen, and this certainly gives rise to many new ideas. And to highlight that, on the left-hand side, this would be the sensor in this case, which is handheld, but you could think of any type of remote measurement in the future. And just to line up some opportunities, certainly we will more and more rely on different prognosis systems where we gain weather data via satellite. The other opportunity to gain information from our field site from an altitude of 400-500 meters with small airplanes might be another opportunity. Balloons have been tested and trialed to test for water stress. Drones are certainly upcoming, and vehicles which we use to maintain our vineyard, either man-powered or autonomously, are probably some future activities where we will see a huge development and improvement, again to gain better information from the field. If we go back to the Riesling trial, then how did the defoliation practices impact on berry size? And here we did find that the mechanical defoliation above the canopy is causing smaller berries, and smaller berries being less susceptible against bunch rot. Well, bunch rot under our moderate climatic conditions is an issue, as you can see in many years, and Riesling is quite susceptible. The instrumentations we do implement with our canopy manipulation strategies, they certainly will help and improve, however not entirely overcome. To conclude, I think one of the major outcomes of the Innovine Project was that we did in parallel and with different varieties experiments where we had the opportunity under different environmental conditions to test for their susceptibility. Pruning systems, trellis systems certainly will be something we need to focus and consider in future. Well, of course, variety, rootstock, as well as scion is one very hot topic in terms of any type of adaptation or, at the end, reduction of pesticides in our fields. Well, for the varieties we've tested, certainly we were able and could show and provide evidence that bunch rot could be reduced. And throughout the different strategies in terms of timing, positioning, and the intensity, we were able to alter, first of all, the leaf area to fruit weight ratio, which had an impact on the bunch rot susceptibility. And Stefano Poni, he will later on discuss about the impact of these strategies on fruit quality. However, in terms of downy mildew, we have not been able to show really significant improvements. And well, one solution we did discuss during the morning, of course, is focusing on mildew-resistant or tolerant varieties, which are probably the only chance to dramatically reduce our fungicide input. Well, last but not least, I would like to invite you for the tasting for tomorrow. We will provide some of the Riesling wines from the experimental trial, as well as some Riesling from our partner Schloss Vollraths. And last but not least, I would thank you for your attention, and at the end, the contributors and the teams for their effort. And well, as you may expect, there are many young people, young scientists involved in those projects, and the list probably would be too long. Thank you.